Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this super easy crochet scarf for beginners. This super easy crochet scarf works up in a hurry. We are using 2 strands of yarn, so it is super squishy and thick, and also matches the super easy crochet hat. I'll link this tutorial in the description box as well. The finished size of my scarf is 55 inches long and 6.5 inches wide. To make the super easy crochet scarf, you will need yarn. This is size 4 worsted weight acrylic. Whatever you have on hand, you'll need 200 grams, so 100 grams of each color. I am using an 8mm crochet hook. You will also need 14 stitch markers, a needle for sewing in your ends, and a pair of scissors. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. To make your super easy crochet scarf for beginners, grab your yarn. We're going to be using 2 strands at a time, and just make a slip knot any which way you normally do, just long enough to sew in with a needle later. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook, and grab your stitch markers, so 14 stitch markers. And we're just going to be chaining sets of 10 and then popping in a stitch marker. So chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We also want to be crocheting relaxed, so we don't want to be pulling on our yarn to shrink up that loop. We want to just leave it as it is naturally as we crochet. So a loose chain, and if you are a tight crocheter, you might want to go up a hook size. So after we've chained 10, we're going to just flip those pretty V's on the side and looking for these back loops. The first back loop is right here, right underneath the working yarn, that little camel bump right there. We're going to pop a stitch marker into that back loop. And we're just going to repeat that until all of our stitch markers are used up, or you have chained 140. So 1, 2, 3, 9, and 10. And pop another stitch marker in. So you can pause the video and keep working along, chaining 10 and popping in a stitch marker until all of your 14 stitch markers are used up. For this tutorial, I'm just going to be making a smaller sample, so your chain will be longer than mine, but exactly the same. You'll be ending with a stitch marker right there. So what we're going to do, we're going to go in to the third back loop, so the one with a stitch marker is number 1. There is number 2, and here is number 3. We're going to go in to number 3 right there and make 1 double crochet into that back loop right there. So 1 double crochet and 1 double crochet into each of these back loops all the way down our chain. So into the next back loop, you can just slide it onto your hook with your finger. They're a bit tricky, but the edge of your scarf will look really pretty, so it's worth it. So 1 double crochet into each back loop all the way down. So pause the video, 1 double crochet into each back loop, and I'll meet you when you get to the end of your chain, right over there. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. At the end of your chain, we have our 1 camel bump left, our 1 back loop. So make sure you go in to that last back loop. It's right on top of our slip knot. That is your last double crochet. You can pop your stitch markers out, but leave this one at the very end. That marks our first stitch, so we want to leave that one in. But the rest you can pop out. And that finishes row 1. To start row 2, chain 1. You want a loose chain, not a tight one. So again, don't pull your yarn to tighten that. Just leave it naturally as it is on your hook. And turn your work. we're going to make our first front loop double crochet right here. So we're going to be working into the front loop only for this pattern, most of this pattern. So all the way along, we're just working into the front loop. So into where that stitch is, but then up and out the top. So we're coming out in the center of these V's. You want to see that? Right in the middle is where we're coming out. So wrap your yarn and into this very first stitch, the first front loop, we're making our first front loop only double crochet. Like that. And the same into each stitch all the way along. So just sliding that front loop onto your hook. And then it comes out straight in the middle of that stitch. So front loop only double crochet all the way along. So you can pause the video and keep working along, one double crochet into each front loop all the way along your row, and I'll meet you when you get to the end where that last stitch marker is. At the end of your row, it'll look like this. Our last double crochet is right here, so this is the last place for our front loop only double crochet. And now we have our chain left. That is going to be a real double crochet. So right where our stitch marker is, we're going to go underneath both of those loops or both parts of that V. So a real double crochet to finish. So in where that stitch marker is and out the other side. So 4 strands of yarn on your hook, 1 double crochet to finish our row. You can pop that last stitch marker out, and that finishes row 2. Now here is row 3. This is the repeat row, so this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of the pattern. Chain 1 and turn your work, and we're going to be starting in that very first stitch and making a front loop only double crochet underneath those 2 strands of yarn. So we're coming up right in the center of that V. So wrap your yarn, front loop only double crochet into the very first stitch. And we're going to do that for each stitch. So same as the last row, all the way along. We're just going to be going in and out the center of that stitch. So just the front loops for our double crochets. All the way along. You can pause the video, keep working along, front loop only double crochet into each front loop, all the way along your row. And I will meet you when we get to the end of our row right over here. At the end of your row, we still have a little hill left, and that is where we're going to put our last double crochet, a real double crochet. So this strand here at the edge, that's our front loop. We want to turn your work to the side, just give it a pinch and turn it. We want to look for both of those loops, or both sides, the front loop and the back loop. We're going to go underneath both of those for a real double crochet to finish our row. So wrap your yarn and 1 proper double crochet at the end of your row. So now you can pause the video, keep working along, just repeating that last row until you have completed 8 rows or your scarf is the width you want it to be. To count your rows, here is row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can also see this nice line going across where we have our loop left. So that is 2, 4, 6, and 8. When you have completed your 8 rows or your scarf is the width you want it to be, we are ready to finish off. So just after that last real double crochet. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a tail long enough to sew in with a needle. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Sew in your tails, and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed making your scarf as much as I enjoyed making mine. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.